Well, I'd experienced Cyrenians in my previous life as a politician. They lobbied me for money, and they got money from me, which in itself was significant because that didn't usually happen. But I met Des then, my predecessor, and turned out he was a constituent. And then I began to make referrals, and I realised that this was an organisation doing something different. They'd identified what was needed and got on and did it. And I think that early experience then made me think that when the job did become available, this is something I want to do. I realized pretty early on that this was an organization I was going to be here for a long time. I also found an organization that was full of passion, though. Passion to make a difference and absolutely pay attention to the person. They were talking about the people, not the numbers, right from the word go. And then also the innovation. Actually, the first event I attended was just before I actually started, which was the launch of the SCCR at the Parliament. And I'm thinking, gee, this is an organisation that thinks differently because they'd said this is what we're experiencing in supporting people. How could we stop that happening in the first place? And that's a theme we've stuck with ever since. I remember really early on going to the Royal Highland Show with the folk from the farm, the community and the staff team there to sell produce. And it began to rain, and I was not well prepared. And one of the residents gave me their jacket. And I'm thinking, this is interesting. You'd think I was the person who was there to look after others, and here as I was getting looked after by the people whom we were supporting, and I knew then, and that felt really comfortable. It felt extraordinary actually, and I thought, geez, this is a place I want to be. And the other thing was, as I explored the Cyrenians' way of working model, unconditional positive regard. That thing where you say, who is this person before me as a human being? Not their story, not all the stuff that's going on in their life, but who is them? Really resonated with my own, I suppose, my values, which is that people matter fundamentally, whether or not they've been in a tough reality or they've done things that we disagree with. And I thought, yeah, this is for me. This is where I belong. I mean, we started with 90 people, most of our money coming from the public sector, no fundraising team, no comms team, to an organisation that's around 200 now, or will probably be at the end of this year. And it really changed the way we raise our money. So I've had to learn new stuff and learn to manage a constantly growing organisation. And that's been both challenging in a good way and brilliant. I've learned to be much calmer. I've learned the art of mindfulness, meditation every morning, all those things, and building that reflective stuff into my working days. I've gone on an enormous personal journey in that sense. I had to work really hard at some stuff in my own personal life that has come out, which has been, I hope, really good. And I think if you were to ask me now, what's the most important thing I've done, is I've worked on the culture. And you work on the culture by being calm in a crisis, by building on your relationships, by focusing on people, and by living the values. Well, somebody said to me once that marathon runners run for most of the race at 80% of their potential, so they've got something left when they need to make the sprint. And I think being the chief executive of an organisation is a marathon, not a sprint. Another thing is put your energy into the things where you can have the biggest difference. So there's some stuff in life that you just have to accept that you can't change. You need to pay attention to it, and you don't say it's okay. I mean, but actually, what can I change about that? What can I influence, and what can I actually change? So accepting some stuff, what can I influence? So realizing I'm not going to change that completely on my own, and then the things I can actually do, and managing my time and my energy for that is important. But I've learned that more than anything else in this organisation. I mean, if I was thinking about my first day and perhaps what I would like to have known or what I would have tell myself, you don't have to have all the answers all the time. I mean, I always tell the story about 6 months in, I thought I'd handle the organisation, and then somebody said, "Do you want to come and see the bees?" And I'm going, "We keep bees? Where bees?" And of course, there's several questions in there, and not knowing those answers actually is okay. And the sort of other side of that is also being able to say, no, we got that wrong. I've really tried to create a no blame culture. And the only way to do that is by modeling it. And it's okay for people to say, we've made a mistake. What can we learn from it? And how do we fix it? And I think that's really important. And all of that sits in culture and values. And that's also one of the first things I did was really focus in on the values, work out which are the ones we actually wanted to prioritize. We had a whole series of sessions about that involved staff, partners, trustees, people we supported, all that stuff. And that's where we came up with a four compassion, respect, integrity, and innovation. And then working out how do you embed them in every single thing that we do. And I think really understanding that the focus on that is the thing that makes the biggest difference. One of the things I've had to learn in this organisation is that it's okay to feel proud. It's not very Presbyterian. It's almost explicit within that tradition that pride before a fall and all that stuff comes from that kind of theological thinking. And I see why it's there, but actually there are things I've said it. I'm proud of. One of the biggest, of course, is how we responded during COVID. Absolutely extraordinary what people did and how they did it and how they looked after each other as a process. I had to isolate at that time, so I wasn't able to get out and about. I found that particularly difficult, but people were incredibly supportive. And the sort of things we did, the 80,000 meals, the data stuff that we put out, the laptops getting out to families, supporting families who are under huge stress. Hearing stories of people who were coming to our recovery groups, discovering because of the stuff we'd given them that they could attend a discovery group in Los Angeles at 2 a.m. was just phenomenal. So yeah, there's those things. There's also, and let's be clear, I'm proud of everything everybody does in all the services. So if I mention a few now, it's not because I'm more proud of them than others, but there are some that particularly resonate with me because of what we did, because they're new. The Hospital InReach team, for example, and how we got to that, and the fact that they set that up during COVID. I mean, mercy me when you think about it. But that, and we see that now being shown as a model of the whole thing around Ask and Act and the legislative change. So there you are. So the Hospital InReach team came from that people's experience and then is driving political change. And I think I'm really proud of that. Wish, because it was just such a new thing and nobody had done it in Scotland before. But also some of the stuff we've managed to do in the influencing world as well, the Public Health Scotland stuff, the fact that we are modelling how to take a public health approach. Let's be clear, I'm incredibly proud and humbled by the work that my colleagues do day in, day out in supporting people directly whose lives' chances have been greatly reduced for their ability to flourish, or if we don't intervene, they will become greatly reduced. And they are precious, life-giving things, and what a privilege it is for me to play a role in supporting them. The compassion for people, the ability of folk here to, I remember one of our colleagues saying that she knew that she was making progress with somebody when they rang up to cancel a meeting. So that's a really compassionate act, to see what seems like a problem actually as a positive move, because that person was finally taking responsibility for their actions. And having the compassion to see that, I think, is phenomenal. And then at the heart of it, of course, is that ability to consume enormous quantities of cake. As we, the mantra in Cyrenians is, when in doubt, bring cake. And that is lived to the nth degree in this organisation. And I love that. Well, I suppose the fact that I have been here 12 years is probably my biggest personal achievement. It is the longest I've ever spent in one job. I was on the council for 13 years, but did very different jobs within that. But I've never done one job for this length of time. And that, why am I proud of that? Well, I've managed to be a leader in a particular type of role, first time I've ever done it, and I appear to have done it reasonably well. I find those words difficult to say, but I kind of want to say it. And I've done it because of the relationships I've created with people and people have created with me. And I've always wanted to be, I've always seen them as the most important thing, your relationships, the quality of relationships. And I'm proud of the fact that we've created an organization that thrives. That's its lifeblood. And I'm also proud of things like, the new government's in Scotland's manifesto has a commitment that we wrote, a verbatim lift, a homeless prevention fund of £50 million over 10 years. Never achieved that in all my politicking. I mean, there was a time when I wrote the manifesto, but I've never done that, and that's just extraordinary. So one of the more extraordinary things at this organisation is every week there's something that you go, geez, wow, that was big. But if I think about a few, just for now, we want this organisation to be a place that people love working at. And I remember talking to one new start, and I said, so what attracted you to Cyrenians? And they'd been with us about 3 months by that point, and they said to me, well, everybody kept telling me how wonderful Cyrenians was a place to work, and I thought, well, I better find that out. And it is. And I thought that's phenomenal, both the reputation and the experience, and that was great. I was doing the pantry, just hanging about, volunteering, as it were. Like, I like to get out and amongst the services. I was doing a pantry, and I said to one of the volunteers, "How did you end up doing the pantry with us?" And she said, my son had a mental health breakdown. Our circumstances were that was not a great place for us. And then you guys got involved and you gave me my son back. Just extraordinary. And that's why she turns it every week. Phenomenal. Phenomenal. And then I know when there was a big piece of work going on, and it had multiple funders, and there was a bit of nervousness going around about that. And then one of the funders said to me, actually, the reason that we decided to go with this is because Cyrenians were involved. And we knew if Cyrenians were involved, the chances are it would work. And I thought, geez, that's quite something for them. And they said it completely unsolicitedly, I didn't ask them or anything. And that was a great compliment to the organisation and its people. If you ask what I hope people will remember when they think of the time here, it's that public health thing, that people understand what it is to take a public health approach to homelessness prevention, and that it's real. That also, though, I think within the organisation there is, and it's connected to that, there is a greater sense of who we are and why we are. Sometimes I'll hear a story and it sort of captures the organisation, and that's not something I was there, but what people told me about it. And in fact, the fact that people told me about it is one of the reasons. So there was a moment in the Royal Ed Gardens when they were presenting certificates for the people who'd done their community justice payback stuff. Now that in itself is a sign of what we're about. We community justice payback is supposed to be a punishment, and we turn it into an opportunity for celebration, and that speaks volumes in itself. So anyway, so they were going to present certificates, and this guy said, can I bring my son? And we're going, oh, of course you can, thinking that's interesting. He said, yeah, I've never received a certificate for anything in my life, ever. Right? This guy was in his 50s, right? So on it, they do it and they have the wee celebration, and you can see the son and the father, just there was a connection there, electric, there were tears and, a moment. And it was described to me as a moment of love, forgiveness, and hope. And that's what we're about. We're about creating the opportunity where the stuff that went wrong in life you can be forgiven by, because love exists. And because of those two things, then the hope is that we can get from a tough place to a good place. So this job has changed me beyond anything I can describe, both with some deeply personal things and also professionally. I had to reinvent myself when I came here because, I was known as a minister and then as a politician. That's a dangerous combination in itself, you know. But actually, I was enabled to do that by the culture of this organization. And Carl Rogers, who does the unconditional positive regard, has a quote that's something like, "When I accept who I am changed. Accepting who I am in all my vulnerability and flaws, as well as all the good things that I can do." That moment of self-acceptance was enormous, and this organization gave me the opportunity to do that in a way that no other place had ever done. Um, Part of that acceptance is learning your limitations, learning what you can't or even shouldn't try to do, as well as things that you can. And then the real importance in that context of appointing people as a leader around you who are much better and smarter than you are. And all those things mean that I am absolutely a better person for having worked here. And the gift that people have given me as a result is just, I have flourished in a way that I didn't know that I could flourish. And that's really extraordinary. If I was to try and sum this up in a couple of sentences, there would be two: one about the people we support, and one about me. So always remember that the journey from exclusion to inclusion is an inner journey first and foremost. Material things happen and matter, but how we feel about ourselves is what makes or breaks us. And then for me, and as a leader, if you live the golden rule, in other words, treat others as you would want to be treated, which I regard as the manifestation of living our values, then good things will happen. When we can do those two things, then this organization can continue to go from strength to strength, and more people will flourish as a consequence.